first and largest benefit of doing your taxes correctly and being proactive about your taxes is the peace of mind that you get to at the end of the year, knowing that you're on top of the game and you don't have to go through the panic attack of trying to collect everything and get everything filed. Financially, a great upside of it is that one of the core tenets of tax law is that you have a right to pay no more than your fair share. And so, if you are proactive about your taxes and your tax situation throughout the year, as we will discuss more, being able to set yourself up for success with deductions and, of course, tax credits will help you minimize the taxes that you have to pay and save you that much more money.
Well, everyone, welcome to Behind the Review. Today is a very special episode because we're talking about taxes for small businesses. This is that time of year where we start to worry or stress or maybe just get those taxes done. And I thought it was about time we bring some experts on the show to talk us through all the things. What can you do? What do you need to be aware of? And how can you plan so that maybe next tax season isn't so stressful? So today I have Shelly Abril, Senior Payroll Compliance Officer. And then I also have Holland King, Head of Tax Credits and Compliance at Gusto. And if you haven't listened to our first episode with one of the Gusto owners, we'll put that link in the show notes. Definitely check that out. But today we're talking all things taxes. And first, I'd love if you both could just tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your role. Shelly, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I'm Shelly from the payroll compliance team at Gusto. I lead the payroll product compliance operations. And I've been with Gusto for about 8 years. Gusto's a payroll company. We serve about over 400,000 clients in the U.S. We're nationwide. We offer payroll, HR, benefits, and a host of other solutions for small businesses. I'll kick it over to Holland.
Thank you. I'm Holland King, Head of Tax Credit Compliance here at Gusto, where we help small businesses identify, document, and claim tax credits. On average, small businesses can save about $30,000 in taxes from tax credits. I'm an attorney with 17 years in the tax credit space and passionate about helping companies with tax credits. I also am the author of Incentive Insider, a Substack newsletter that is focused on incentives and credits.
Incredible. I'm so excited to have you both here. And admittedly, I do the small business taxes for my fiance. He has a very small business. He used to own a brick and mortar, but now he just does a little side thing in addition to some other things. And we're not big fans of this time of year. I think for some small business owners, it can be challenging, frustrating. Sometimes it's just the complete unknown, right? Like, don't even know where to begin or what I need to do. I think today we're going to try to dispel some of those myths, make us feel more confident. Should we maybe start with like some of the reasons why this is important? Like, what might happen if you don't file your taxes correctly? Or what are some of the like potential issues for your business if we don't do this season the correct way?
So yeah, if you don't do your taxes correctly, that can set you up for a lot of pain going into the future. If you miss something on your taxes, if you do a calculation incorrect, or you don't report everything correctly, then you're potentially looking at penalties and interest, as well as the dreaded IRS audit. The IRS estimates that SMBs pay on average a penalty of about $845 per year just for payroll taxes. And that's something that you can easily avoid, as Shelly will be talking about. And you can make it so much easier on yourself and on your business and employees.
I think if you've got employees also, not all small businesses have employees yet. But once you bring on employees, there's also the added stress to your employees, to your staff. There's important documents that need to be given to them so that they can go file their taxes and they can go collect potentially a refund from the IRS or state governments. And so the downstream impact to your employees as well is important to note once you become an employer.
Okay, so On the flip side, before we even dig into how to prepare and what to kind of be doing as you're getting ready for tax season, let's talk about the upside of doing your taxes correctly. And I think there's a lot of upside that small business owners might not be thinking of or aware of. So let's give people that little sweet treat. What can we look forward to once we know what to do and are more confident about this?
Sure. I think the first and largest benefit of doing your taxes correctly and being proactive about your taxes is the peace of mind that you get to at the end of the year, knowing that you're on top of the game and you don't have to go through the panic attack of trying to collect everything and get everything filed. Financially, a great upside of it is that one of the core tenets of tax law is that you have a right to pay no more than your fair share. And so, if you are proactive about your taxes and your tax situation throughout the year, as we will discuss more, being able to set yourself up for success with deductions and, of course, tax credits will help you minimize the taxes that you have to pay and save you that much more money.
So now that we know what we're working towards and what we're hopefully going to get in our tax return as small business owners, let's talk about how to get prepared. And I think the first thing is knowing what's different between maybe a personal return and how people are familiar doing their own taxes and what business taxes entail. Holland, could you tell us more about that?
One of the biggest differences between personal and business taxes is that as a personal or an individual filing taxes, it's mostly an annual requirement. You get your W 2 in January, you might get a 1099, you get some bank statements and things like that. And then you either fire up your tax software or you go to your tax preparer and file the taxes and hope for a refund. With businesses, it is a year round requirement and really needs to become part of the natural rhythm of your business. There are items that you have to take care of almost on a monthly basis, depending on your type of business, whether it is sales tax and the filings and remittance of sales tax, whether it's payroll tax, or even income tax with your estimated payments. Also, if you have employees, then you need to be working with your employees to make sure that you're withholding everything correctly, getting everything set up for them such that when it gets to the end of the year for them, they are able to have all of their requirements ready to go so that they can deal with their annual filing of taxes.
That was super great. And something that brought up for me is the importance as a business owner, whether you're a solopreneur or you have a staff, to determine how you even pay yourself. And I think that plays into the important taxes that small business owners need to be aware of. Could you guys break down for us those various tax types that small business owners should know about?
Sure. And it's going to differ from each type of business as well as where that business is located. Every taxing jurisdiction is going to have their own rules. So it's important that you talk to a professional about your tax situation. Having said that, there are some common themes throughout all of it. Everybody is pretty much familiar with income taxes. That's the annual filing that you do as personal or business. And as a business owner and as a business itself or business entity, that is going to be really driven by your profit and loss statement. So keeping up with that throughout the year, making sure that your books and records are up to date and accurate ties in very, very closely to how much you're going to end up paying through at the end of the year for your income taxes. If you're a solopreneur or a small business owner that is a sole proprietor, then you're going to be on the hook for self-employment taxes. If you're an employee, then the company pays a lot of those taxes for you. But as the business owner and as the sole proprietor, you're going to be on the hook for paying that yourself. And again, this ties into not only your income taxes, but also your estimated taxes that you're going to be paying throughout the year so that you don't get hit with a penalty at the end of the year. Outside of income tax and self-employment tax, you have a number of other taxes. Of course, there's payroll tax, which Shelly will cover. If you're in retail or selling goods or products, then likely going to be subject to sales tax based off of your jurisdiction and location. And then certain businesses are going to be hit with excise tax, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you for that breakdown of the different types of tax to be aware of. Let's dig a little deeper into payroll and employee related tax filing. Shelly, I know that's your expertise. Dig in for us a little bit about what small business owners should be aware of.
Yeah, once you become an employer, so first, when you're just operating on your own as a solopreneur, your tax obligations are roughly the same as they would have been when you were just being an individual self-employed. But once you start hiring on additional employees, as Holland mentioned, you start taking on some responsibility of helping them withhold and even pay throughout the year their income taxes. And so I don't know that all business owners realize that that's part of their responsibility once they start hiring. But you're taking on the obligation of paying the employee, calculating how much they owe, registering with the different taxing authorities across the United States as an employer who's going to be handling income taxes for their employees, and then withholding and paying those taxes on a regular schedule to each of the taxing authorities that you're in. And so it's a change. It's a change of thinking and how you operate and how you plan and organize your time, because it does become more than the annual obligation. At the end of the year, there also are additional things that you have to do as an employer. As I mentioned, you need to help with your employees' tax documents at the end of the year. Those are your W-2s go to your employees. If you have contractors, you may want to give them a 1099, what's called a 1099 NEC. And you give those out at the end of the year. Employers are required to give those to their employee by January 31st each year. And so that they can then proceed with filing their income taxes. And so there's a lot to know and to pick up on as you're sort of building out your business and hiring your teams to support you in completing the work of your business. The good news is there's lots of tools out there that can help you with these things. And so it can sound daunting if you're a small business like a flower shop, but maybe you're good with numbers. Maybe that's your jam, and you have the time to get out the calculator and work closely with your bank to make those payments on time. If that becomes overwhelming and you're not having as much time to set aside to work on those things, or you're very nervous about your skill set being able to do those things well, there's lots of options out there for you to help you support your payments of payroll to your employees and to contractors, as well as the calculation of and even the paying of payroll taxes. Gusto also, offers payroll tax filings, payroll tax deductions, payroll tax deposits on behalf of the 400,000 employers in the US. And there's plenty of options out there to explore.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Sometimes there's other things that require your time, attention, or resources as the owner or manager. And so it's great that there are platforms. And Gusto's amazing because it's for businesses of all sizes, right? It's not really just larger companies or if they have a certain amount of employees. It can be even for small stages too.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's actually our sweet spot. Is we really built Gusto initially to support very, very small businesses, really from the moment that they first hire their first employee, and guide them through that whole process, helping them get registered in the states, and even down to local. I mean, there's some states that have cities that have payroll taxes. So if you're an employer in Pennsylvania or Ohio or Kentucky, those are states that have a large volume of cities and counties that have their own payroll taxes that have to be collected. And you have to register with each of those cities and counties as an employer. And so that can be overwhelming. But yeah, we built Gusto around helping small businesses. That's our sweet spot, frankly. And so glad you mentioned that. Thank you for raising that.
Amazing. Okay, one little thing I want to talk about before we move on to some unknown tax credits that business owners should be aware of is the little employment loophole of having contract employees. So maybe that period between when you're ready to hire actual employees for your company, or maybe when you just have projects or those types of things that you're looking to hire support for. Could one of you just kind of cover that, what I would consider more of a gray area, and how that changes the taxes and how you approach them?
So for employees, yeah, employer is obligated. They are actually required to do the tax withholdings and the tax calculations. You work with the employee to figure out how much to take out. There's forms that help you figure out how much the employee needs to have taken out of their check each pay period. And then the employer is responsible for holding that money until it's due to the government. And so that's an obligation for all employers. If you have an individual contractor, sometimes they have mandated withholding that has to be taken out. And there are situations where the payer of that individual contractor is required for the to make the tax obligations on behalf of their contractor, but it's less common, I would say. Holland, anything you would add to that?
I would say when you're considering whether or not to bring on an independent contractor versus an employee, then you need to look at the test the IRS has set out. It's not just which one is easier for the business, which one is easier for the individual, but there are actual requirements about is this person, is this entity an independent contractor, or are they actually an employee? And that can get to be a pretty detailed test. So, again, I would recommend that if you have any doubt, if you have any questions about that, seek out a professional that can help you with it.
Amazing. I love that. Okay, let's talk about some of the unknown tax credits that small businesses should be aware of. What are some of these and how can they go about trying to get them?
First, I would say there are thousands of credits and incentives out there, and that can be everywhere from your local city, locale, municipality, up to the federal government and even some international incentives. So there is a ton to talk about here, but for a small business, you're not going to qualify for each and every one of them. So it really helps to find somebody who can help you sort through all of the noise and figure out what is best for you and your situation. Some of my favorite tax credits and ones that um, are applicable to a large number of small businesses. First is the Research and Development Tax Credit. This is a tax credit that was designed to incentivize innovation within the United States. And it's the biggest misconception here is that it's for pharmaceutical companies or people who are wearing white lab coats each and every day. But really, it's for everyday business. If you're bringing a new product to market, you're coming up with that new product, then you can potentially qualify. Another great one is if you're trying to make your manufacturing process that much more efficient, then you're likely to qualify. One example of a new product or a company that brought a new product to market is Heckler Design. They focus on office furniture and stands, desk, that type of thing. They had a new product that they were creating from scratch and ended up saving $380,000 with the R&D tax credit. So it can be serious savings for something that your company is probably already doing. On the manufacturing side, another great example is Alley-Oop. They are a makeup manufacturer, and they needed to make their manufacturing process more efficient. They were looking to save on cost as well as time within the manufacturing process. And again, this was something that they were probably going to do regardless of the tax credit, but the tax credit saved them another $230,000. So it's, again, really good savings for a company that allows them to put the money back into their business, put the money back into innovation. One of the things about the R&D tax credit is that it was initially designed to be used against income taxes, which is great for your large companies that have a lot of tax liability, but it is not necessarily great for startup companies or small businesses that have limited income tax liability. So there is now an election that you can make to apply the R&D tax credit against your payroll taxes. And I'll let Shelly talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Holland. Yeah, the way that that works is the employer can opt to have that tax credit applied to their payroll tax obligations to the IRS. And so payroll companies, Gusto does this, possibly others do as well, where you can take that credit, apply it against your current income taxes. You don't have to wait until the end of the year to file your tax return for your annual taxes. You can take it with each payroll as you pay out your payroll tax liabilities for that year. And so it's a real-time credit you're eligible to receive. In some cases, if you claim it on the quarterly form that goes to the IRS, it's called the 941 form. If you claim on that form, then IRS will issue a refund. And so that's the other way that you can get it faster than waiting until the end of the year. So it's a great way to help small businesses manage their cash flow.
Amazing. That's awesome. Okay, I've heard of another credit called the WOTC Tax Credit. Can one of you tell me what that is?
Sure. The WOTC tax credit is the work opportunity tax credit. And this tax credit is designed to incentivize employers to hire disadvantaged individuals. There are effectively 10 categories of these disadvantaged target groups, and they can be anything from veterans, to individuals from low income houses. The tax credit is great for retail and service based businesses such as restaurants because it's based off of the hiring of an individual. So you can hire a veteran, have them work in the business, and the next time you go around to hire somebody else, you can take advantage of the tax credit again. For the most part, the tax credit is $2,400 per eligible employee, but it can go up to $9,600 in certain cases.
Wow, that's incredible. And now it makes sense how I've heard of that before. I've definitely worked at businesses that had that and been a patron of businesses that have that. And I think what's really cool is it can be a front facing thing, like it could be a part of your business's mission, and it could be something that you talk about publicly, that you have this group of employees, or it can be something that's just on the back end, right? A way for you to source and hire and support different groups of people, and it can just kind of be a part of your employee makeup. It doesn't have to be front and center as something that you publicize or talk about to your customer base. Are there any other small business tax credits that you think are very, maybe largely applicable to lots of different small business owners that we should mention?
Sure. Another great one is the 401k tax credit. This tax credit is, as it sounds, offered to companies who are starting up a 401k for their employees. It's available for the first 3 years of a new 401k plan and can help offset some of those startup costs. And you can get up to $15,000 during those first 3 years. A lot of states require that small businesses have such plans. There are currently 11 states. And so if you're in one of those states and you need to start up a plan in order to come into compliance with those mandates, then this is a great credit to take advantage of that as you're already having to do it.
I love that. And something that I think is also important to remember about the 401k opportunities is it can be attractive to employees too, right? Certain businesses and maybe even certain industries aren't always known for having all those benefits for their employees if they're a small business. And it can be a way to attract talent, but also retain them. You know, if they feel like they're able to contribute to their own retirement or have health benefits, that's an added reason to stay at a business, even if it's a small business. I think Gusto can kind of help with that, right? I mean, if people are using you for some of your additional benefit services, is that something that's a part of that program?
Sure. Gusto actually helps with all three of these tax credits. We have a platform specifically designed for the R&D tax credit, the research and development tax credit, that helps you not only identify the eligible cost, but also collect the documentation and prepare for the compliance side of it. The work opportunity tax credit is available through a partnership, and we help small businesses capture that as well. The 401k tax credit, if you're using one of our eligible plans, then we also help you take advantage of that through our platform.
This has been super helpful and great information for what to be aware of. I think one of the big takeaways I want this episode to have is that this shouldn't be a right now action. For us as individuals, maybe when we're filing our taxes, it's this period of time, right? But for small business owners, it should be a year-long thing, and that makes it less work, in my opinion, if there's this maintenance and there's this ongoing preparation for tax season. So, what do you think small business owners can do to implement some of that year round process and really get prepared for tax season as every quarter goes by?
One thing I'd mention for small businesses, if they have employees and they're paying those payroll taxes, and it's probably applicable for other taxes like sales tax, is this is the time of year when the different taxing authorities, the government, will reassign requirements for each of their taxpayers. So that you may get a notice that a tax rate has changed for 2025. You may get a notice that you have to pay either less often or more often than you did in the prior year. So this is a great time to be really monitoring your mail, to make sure you're aware of those changes when they happen. Because if you don't, even though you've done all these great things throughout 2024, you would kind of get off on the wrong foot for 2025. And so, really want to be mindful of monitoring that incoming mail process.
I'm just going to take a guess, but if you're a Gusto client, do you get updated about those local changes in the platform?
We do. We help customers. If they receive a notice, they can mail it into us. We'll let them know either we've updated their account to match the new tax rate or the new deposit due dates, or we'll tell them if there's action that's needed by them in order to comply with the new year's requirements. And if we learn about a government agency is rolling out like a new system that they have to go register in, that happens pretty frequently, we'll notify them, hey, you need to do this by this date so that you're registered so that we can file your taxes for you come, let's say, April, if the change is effective in April. So we try to give them as much heads up warning as possible prior to a change.
Okay, how can small businesses gather the right documentation and keep track of it, especially for those compliance and tax credits?
Yeah, very similar to what we were just talking about. Making this a year round exercise, making this part of your normal business is going to make it so much easier and so much less of a headache. Setting up the processes, whether it is captured within, and we'll talk about some of the software options, but captured within software that you use within your business on a day to day basis, or just making it such that you have a folder that as you're going through, let's say, researching a new product, that you throw everything into that folder and then you're able to hand it off to your either tax preparer or whatever professional that you're using to capture those or help assist with those. But the main thing here is just to make sure that you are keeping on top of it throughout the year. Make it part of your tax filing calendar. Make sure that you're hitting all of those tax filing dates, but also that you're capturing all the documentation that you need throughout the year in order to be ready at the end of the year to take advantage of some of these items.
Absolutely. And I think setting aside money can be an official and formal process for small business owners throughout the year, right? They can actually plan in advance so that they don't need to come up with this big amount of tax payment at the end of the year.
Yes. So apart from your estimated payments or your required payments throughout the year, making sure that you're on top of it, especially as your business is growing and maybe your profits are becoming that much better this year, you want to make sure that you are ready for that end of the year true up. So even if you're making your estimated payments, you still might owe some at the end of the year. Having a having a good profit and loss system, having a good relationship with your tax preparer, this can all make you really prepared and make it so much less painful when you get to the end of the year.
One thing I wanted to mention was if a business is looking to potentially hire some employees in their next year and they're wondering what type of financial obligation that is, there are some paycheck calculators and estimators out there that are free to use. Gusto hosts one. I'm sure that there's others. But one of the things that they can do is they can forecast. We've talked a lot on this call about the employee tax obligations and the employer's responsibility for paying those taxes. On top of that, there's also additional taxes that the employer owes for paying their employees. So their employer taxes on top of the expense of the employee's pay and their benefits And so it's important to understand what that full obligation is when you're looking to hire an employee, and go into that with your eyes wide open so that there's not those surprises later, and it impacts your cash flow. And so using those calculators can help you with your hiring and planning expenses.
That's great advice. And we will link the Gusto calculator in the show notes. And this is a great transition to our final topic, which is kind of that delicate balance between trying to do things yourself, hiring help, different software and platforms. And there's a lot out there. So let's start first with what types of experts should small business owners consider when they're thinking about profit and loss, submitting their tax returns, things of that nature?
I would obviously recommend having a trusted partner that you can go to ask questions, whether this is your tax preparer that you are talking to throughout the year, making sure that you're on top of those estimated payments, a good bookkeeper, even if you're using some software like Zero or FreshBooks, is going to help not only keep you on top of the expenses and profit and loss statements, but also make sure that you're capturing and categorizing everything correctly. A lot of the small business audits that I have helped represent in the past have stemmed from not having great systems in place in order to keep on top of the categorization and documentation related to their business expenses. They had business expenses, but they were not able to actually show that the way that the IRS or Department of Revenue necessarily needed.
One other thing I'd add to what Holland was saying is, I think, and I mentioned it earlier, if you're super confident managing the needs of your business, and your staff and however many locations you're growing to, and you can still manage all of your payroll obligations, I think that's great. What I would just recommend is don't wait until you're overwhelmed. It's not uncommon when new clients come to us looking for help with payroll. They ask, "Can you help me with my back taxes, my late tax returns?" And unfortunately, I mean, at that point, there's already penalties attached to those. So my recommendation is, if you can do it and stay on top of it, that's great. If you need help, or you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're just not confident in your ability, I would just recommend folks seek out a professional before they're already subject to penalties and interest and fines, and just things that you don't want to get the scary notices from tax authorities. So seek out help before there's a mistake. It would be my recommendation.
Absolutely. And also to do it when you're not in a place of stress, like you said. I mean, you're not thinking as clearly or maybe even making those decisions to find the best partner or best platform when you're like panicked and overwhelmed.
On our website, and we can also send you the link so you can put them in the show notes. We have a link to a Gusto partner directory. And so if folks are really looking for that trusted partner for their business, from an accounting standpoint, looking for an accounting partner, we have a directory of folks that we have worked with and have good experience with, and so we can share that with your listeners.
That's perfect. It's always great to have a referral of some sort, and Gusto is a great platform to kind of use as that local funnel. So we'll definitely link that for everyone. And I think, like you mentioned, you want to have someone that you trust or can even like help you with some of these questions you have about your business. And not paying attention to it, whether that's a profit and loss sheet or your tax returns or whatever, is never going to help you. It's scary sometimes to try to figure this stuff out or to start paying attention to the numbers. But the only way you can really make a positive change is if you look at the numbers. So I think you gave some great advice today. Let's maybe close out with some thoughts on different apps or software that people can use. Obviously, we know about Gusto, and we'll give it another plug here at the end and a reminder of the main things you focus on. But what are some of those other recommendations before we give everyone our Gusto closeout that people maybe want to check out for themselves?
Sure. So, again, I think the most fundamental piece of software that any business can have is a good bookkeeping software. This will help you with the deductions, help you with the expenses, help you track your income, and make sure that you're getting paid on time. We partner with Zero and FreshBooks, so we love both of those companies. Another great software for businesses is making sure that you have some sort of document retention software. And this can be anything from your email software, whether it's Gmail or Outlook or whatever property you use, being able to capture those emails, capture the back and forth about with your team about the new product, about the changes to your manufacturing process, as well as any other communication systems. That can be Slack or Teams or even GChat. Again, being able to capture those and utilize those at the end of the year to capture your tax credits is going to make it so much better and help you capture and maximize the tax credits.
Fabulous. Shelly, any favorite ones that you want to highlight?
Oh, I mean, I guess depending on where they're at in their growth, getting something like Excel or Google Sheets to help them with tracking, receipts, expenses, that kind of thing, just to keep it organized, labeled by year, that kind of thing. So they can pull that up quickly when working with their accountant.
Awesome. For everyone listening, remind us again, who is Gusto and how can they help this season and going forward as business owners think about their taxes?
Yeah, Gusto's a payroll company. We were founded over a decade ago, and we focus on payroll, HR, helping our customers with their HR needs, benefits, as you mentioned, and then we're continuing to expand our suite of products to help really small businesses in the United States to not just survive but to thrive. Our goal is to be a thought partner in really every industry and help them grow and succeed in and the businesses where they choose to build themselves up. And so whether that's a flower shop, a bakery, a tech shop, whatever it is, we want to be your thought partner and help get you the resources and tools that you need. And so I really encourage folks to check us out and hoping that this information has been helpful today.